All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to unpack the huge timber shortage that's been putting a serious squeeze on Australia's housing industry. Now, this is a story about some pretty big challenges for sure, but it's also about some incredible innovation. So let's get to it.
If you've been thinking about building a house or you've just been keeping an eye on the news, you have definitely asked yourself this. That crazy long wait for a new home, it's not just some abstract headline. It's a real problem, and it's rooted in a shortage of one of the most basic building blocks we have, timber. So, to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the squeeze itself. Then, we'll dive into the perfect storm of things that caused it. After that, we'll see the ripple effect it's had on housing, how the industry is fighting back, and finally, we'll lay out the new playbook for builders. Okay, first up, what exactly are we talking about here? At its heart, Australia's timber squeeze is a classic case of demand just going through the roof while supply completely tanked. And that created this massive bottleneck right where it hurts the most, in housing and construction. And look, these issues don't exist in a bubble. They're all connected, like a chain reaction. You get these severe supply shortages, right? Well, that immediately leads to unpredictable, frustrating project delays. Those delays mean costs start climbing, and fast. And all of that puts an insane amount of pressure on everyone, from the builders trying to get the job done to the homeowners just waiting to move in.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? Well, it wasn't just one thing. Nope, it was more like a perfect storm. A whole bunch of major problems converging and hitting the timber supply chain all at the same time. And you know that phrase, perfect storm? It's not just a cliche here. It is exactly what happened. We're talking about several completely different problems that on their own would have been bad, but together, they created a crisis. So let's break down that storm. Factor one, the absolutely catastrophic Black Summer bushfires. They just wiped out massive areas of timber plantations. At the exact same time, you had government programs like Home Builder that sent demand for new homes into overdrive. Then, to make things worse, the whole global shipping network seized up, so getting timber from overseas became a nightmare. And finally, right here at home, our own sawmills just couldn't keep up. It was a mess. Okay, so with a storm like that, you know there's going to be some serious fallout. This wasn't just a problem on paper. It had a huge, tangible ripple effect that was felt right across the entire housing industry.
The impacts were immediate, and they were harsh. Widespread delays became the norm. The price of essentials like framing and flooring just shot up. But here's the interesting part. A crisis like this forces people to get creative. We started to see a big shift toward more efficient building methods like prefab and modular. And suddenly, demand for engineered timber alternatives went through the roof.
And you can really see that shift right here. While traditional timber became a total wild card, engineered timbers like LVL, that's laminated veneer lumber, and CLT, cross-laminated timber, offered something builders were desperate for: reliability. You're talking consistent supply, stable performance, and perfectly precise dimensions. It was an absolute game changer. Which brings us to the next chapter of this story. And honestly, this is where it gets really interesting. The industry didn't just throw its hands up. It started adapting, innovating, and forging a new path forward. It's actually a pretty cool story of resilience.
And the good news is there are some real signs of improvement on the horizon. We're talking about serious investment in new softwood plantations to secure our future supply. We're getting more timber in from Europe, New Zealand, and America to fill the gaps. And critically, our own local manufacturing of those engineered products is really ramping up. It's a full court press to get things back on track.
So what does this all mean for the folks on the ground, the builders actually trying to get houses built? Well, it means it's time for a whole new playbook. We're talking about new strategies for not just surviving, but actually succeeding in this new market. This new playbook is all about being proactive. It starts with ordering materials way earlier to lock everything in. It means fully embracing engineered timber for its consistency, adopting what's called hybrid construction. We'll get to that in a sec. It means building rock-solid relationships with reliable suppliers, and of course, seriously considering the efficiencies you get from modular and prefab building.
So we mentioned hybrid construction, but what is that exactly? Well, it's not about throwing out timber altogether. Not at all. It's actually a really smart combination, using steel connectors to reinforce timber frames, which adds strength and integrity right where you need it most.
And this is where little pieces of hardware, like steel cleats, become absolute heroes. They let builders use alternative or slightly weaker timber products because they add so much strength. They reinforce the joints in those engineered frames, and they make sure everything's stable even if the timber dimensions are a little bit off. Plus, they speed up assembly and they're built to last, a small part that makes a massive difference. So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's this. The timber shortage is definitely still a thing, but the real story here is how quickly and how cleverly the industry is adapting. It's a powerful example of a crisis becoming a catalyst for some serious innovation. And that kind of leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? This timber crisis forced the entire construction industry to think outside the box and innovate its way out of a corner. It really makes you wonder, what other huge challenges in building, from sustainability to affordability, could we solve if we just applied that same kind of creative, adaptive thinking?